Welcome to Lunch with Legacy Leaders, a weekly talk show with local and national thought leaders on issues impacting the Black community. Now introducing our host, Miss Anne Marie Sorrell.
Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of Lunch with Legacy Leaders. I'm your host, Anne Marie Sorrell, President and CEO of the Mosaic Group. Thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us this afternoon. Before we get started with our broadcast, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Broward Health, AARP, the Solid Waste Authority of Palm Beach County, and the African American Black Alzheimer's Disease Initiative at the John P. Husband Institute for Human Genomics, University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. If you or someone you know is experiencing loss of memory or memory problems, please contact their research team for more information at 877-686-6444. Now, today I am joined in the studio by an award-winning, Emmy award-winning journalist and co-anchor on NBC6 News, Mr. Jawan Strader. Jawan, welcome.
How are you doing, Anne Marie?
I am wonderful. It is such an honor to interview you. Normally, you're doing the interviewing.
I am. I usually am. I am. So this is interesting, but I love this and I love the engagement.
Absolutely. Well, before we get started, I'm just going to highlight a couple of things from your bio for our audience who may not be familiar with you, which I don't know who isn't, but if they're not, we're going to make them familiar with you today.
You got it.
So, Jawan Strader is an Emmy Award-winning journalist and one of South Florida's most recognizable news figures. Strader co-anchors NBC6 News weeknights at 5, 6, and 11 p.m. with Jackie Nespral. And he's also host of Voices with Jawan Strader, a community affairs show dedicated to the Black community and the disenfranchised. Strader brings more than 20 years of experience in journalism to the anchor desk, covering some of the biggest and most impactful stories that have touched South Florida and the country. He's originally from Indianapolis, Indiana, but has called South Florida home for over a decade. His career has taken him from South Bend, Indiana, to Tulsa, Austin, Washington, D.C., Cleveland, and Miami. The Indiana University Journalism and Speech Communications graduate joined WTVJ NBC6 in 2012. Before joining WTVJ, he worked at the local CBS affiliate where he was a weekend anchor, 10 p.m. anchor, and morning anchor and host of a community affairs show. Jawan has won a number of Emmy Awards, including one for anchoring. And in 2018, the Miami New Times recognized Strader as the best news anchor. In 2016, he received the Media Excellence Award from CCNN Live for the best news anchor. So welcome, and those are just some of your accolades.
Yeah, I was about to say, people don't have to even hear all that stuff, you know. There's a lot. And Anne Marie, my queen, I don't want to correct you at all, but if I don't, I think my mom may get upset. So, because She named me, so it's Jawan Strader.
Jawan Strader. Thank you.
Exactly.
Listen, it's important that we correct our names.
Yeah, and that's the only other than that, I would never ever correct you. But
it's okay.
If my mom is watching this, I know mom is like cringing every time you say Jawan and you say my last name wrong. I know my mom is like, I named him and she's not saying his name right. So that's it.
Listen, that's the Pahokee meme. Be like Jawan.
Yeah, so don't say Jawan. So don't say that. So Jawan. So Jawan.
No, it's all good. Jawan Strader.
You got it.
Okay, got it. All right, so in your own words, briefly tell us about your journey to becoming one of the top Emmy Award-winning journalists, in South Florida and beyond.
Well, it wasn't an easy journey, but it was all about having faith and belief in myself. And thanks to listening and mentorship, I was able to make it. I mean, I barely graduated high school. I tell people this all the time, but it was because I didn't believe in myself at the time. I didn't put in enough effort. And then I had a form of dyslexia. I didn't find out about that until I was in college. And I was able to go to college because of a program that allowed basically first time college students or generational college students to go to college on a probationary period. So I was able to go to college at Indiana University. And television was something that I had always wanted to do. If it wasn't sports, it was television. And so when I got to college, everybody knew from the time I was a freshman that I wanted to be on television. And so I knew by listening to all those that have made it, all the advice, and which is subjective, but listening was going to take me a long way. I always say this: education is the key to success. And what I mean by that, education by listening, education in so many different ways, educating yourself on something you don't know. We should always be hungry for that knowledge. And so I was hungry. I wanted to be in television. So I listened, I learned. I had an internship, the first one at Black Entertainment Television, which at the time was located in DC. One of 6 interns in the news department with Ed Gordon and some others. And I was like, I couldn't believe it. I was a junior, about to be a junior in college. I couldn't believe it. But that was a blessing, and God was already paving the way for me. And so from there, as you said in the bio, got my first job out of college in South Bend, Indiana. And I got some bumps and bruises along the way. I thought I was the ish when I first came out of college, and quickly found out that I wasn't. And it took time, but it took a lot of bumps and bruises. But as we know, the similarities with life, you must get knocked down and learn how to get back up. As I just heard a motivational speaker say here recently, and he said, Les Brown said this. Les Brown said that, hey, you could get knocked down, but as long as you're alive and as long as you land on your back, you could always get right back up. And so I learned how to get up after getting knocked down. And to this day, if I get knocked down, I know how to get back up. Because I have a lot of faith. I have a lot of faith in God. I have a lot of faith in my family. And I know with the help of them, especially God, that I can get back up and I can make it. So with that said, those bumps and bruises along the way, which I got, I didn't let it stop me from being the best that I could be. And I always had one goal in this. I had a goal of being the main anchor at a TV station one day in a major market. And that took time, especially being a Black man. It's not easy because everybody wants to judge you. They look at you differently. They think you may sound differently. And I was judged along the way. And sometimes I will add that little flair of hip hop. I will add that little flair of Queen, my brother, my sister, my king. You will hear that in my newscast from time to time. But I couldn't do it in the beginning because I wasn't established. I had to learn how to be professional. I had to learn how to play the game. But once I felt complete, once I got there, then I could be a little bit more of myself. And that's what being in television is all about. Being comfortable, being yourself. The viewers know when you're fake. The viewers can see right through that camera. They could tell right there on the TV screen if you are fake, if you are a real person. They can tell that. And when they're able to connect with you, that's when you get the fan base. That's when you get those that believe in you. That's when you get those that want to watch you. And so with that, those bumps and bruises along the way, the path that I had, which wasn't easy, I was able to get there and get to that dream of where I'm at today as being an evening anchor and being the main anchor at a TV station. Let me tell you this, I have an Emmy right there over my shoulder. One of those Emmys is for anchoring. So nobody could tell me anything as far as I can't do this, because there were those that told me I could not do this. And I use that as motivation. Always use those doubters as fuel to motivate you to be the best that you can be.
Wow. And thank you for sharing your story. It's so inspiring. And I know that you do some mentoring, and I can hear that not only do you have a great calling for media, but I would also speculate motivational speaking as well.
That's right. Well, I do. I do. I believe in motivational speaking. I love motivating and inspiring others, because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for those that inspired me. And, it's funny because this year I celebrate the big 50. And there was a time I didn't even know if I was going to live to be 21. because of the streets and because of shootings and losing my friends and everything else in Naptown in Indianapolis, Indiana, where I'm from. And now to be celebrating 50 years is a blessing, because I didn't even know if I was going to get there. And now I'm almost there. So with that said, I love to motivate and inspire others. I believe that I've made it, but I believe there's so much more that I have to do. And that's inspire others. That's to help people. That's to work with young people that I continue to do. And it's not over. There's so much more I want to do. There's so much more that I want to give back because I've been blessed and I want to be able to bless others.
Absolutely. Well, that moves me into I think you're blessing others and blessing our community with your show, Voices with Jawan Strader.
My girl. Go ahead. Got it right.
By the way, I just got to show this comment here with the correct pronunciation of your name.
Russell. I love it. I love Russell.
No, Russell's amazing. So tell us about your show, Voices. How did this show come about? What was your vision, and how has it morphed since your initial vision?
Oh, wow. So Voices, we've had Voices on for almost 3 years now. And let me tell you, in the beginning, it was my former general manager and former news director, and they wanted to do more. They wanted to connect more with the Black community. So we're basically talking around different ideas. And then I told my news director, I said, listen, I have an idea, but I didn't want to come in there cocky or say it should be my show or anything. I just said, I think we should do a show dedicated to the Black community and the disenfranchised. And I said, I think maybe Jackie and I, my co-anchor, can do it. I didn't want to just say me because I didn't want to come across the wrong way. She said, no, you're going to do it and you're going to name it. And I said, wow, okay. All right, no problem. And I said, I have a name for the show. She said, what's that? I said, Voices. I said, because I want to hear from those we don't hear from enough of. From every day. I want to hear from those people, the voiceless. I want to hear from them. And I want to make sure that we make them a part of this show. We make sure that we hear their stories. There's so many different stories we don't talk about. We don't talk about Black hair. We don't talk about how Black hair, especially with women and young girls, and how important it is to have the conversation and be so proud of your locks and your natural hair. We don't have those conversations. We need to have more of those conversations. And so stories like that. Before George Floyd, and this show got nominated for an Emmy, before George Floyd, I did Driving While Black. I did a show on it that was nominated for an Emmy. And people thought we were crazy. My producer was scared. She was like, are you sure we could? You sure we're not kind of crossing the line? I said, no, we got to talk about this because it happens in our community. It happens all the time. So sure enough, we did it. Driving While Black. Boom. Next thing we took that, we turned it to Breathing While Black. And we turned that as part of the National Association of Black Journalists conference. We had that big old town hall about breathing while Black. And of course, then with George Floyd and everything which happened. And as we know, it helped change and bring into the conversation about why Black lives matter. And the discussions of making sure that our voices are heard. So Voices has morphed from there because we've been having these discussions, but after George Floyd, the discussions continued, but we needed to delve deeper into things that are impacting Black people that you do not hear enough of, and the Afro-Latino community. And it's not just Blacks, but it's also, it could be just the disenfranchised, those that we don't hear the stories from, the parents who lost their children, and like Tony Montalto, who I have on, who's Italian, who lost his daughter Gina in the Parkland shooting, making sure those voices are heard from parents that want to, get their stories across to the community. It's extremely important. So that's why Voices continues to evolve, and that's why it's been so popular. And it's had a lot of success.
Absolutely. And it's so important because those of us in the industry, from the PR side of things, I understand that from a broadcast news, you only have so many minutes to fit in so many stories. So being able to have a show like Voices that can capture more good stories, more important stories, impactful stories to the community that gives more time. And like you said, more voices to those who normally would not probably get the coverage. I think that's amazing.
It is. It really is, Anne-Marie, because there's so many story ideas out there. There's so many stories, and people get frustrated because they feel that you don't want to hear their stories. They feel that you only want to focus on the negative and the bad news in our community. And so how can we change that dynamic? How can we change the narrative? So we can change that, and we can start by listening. We can start by covering those stories. We can start by listening to those stories. And so that's why it's extremely important that we have this show. And this now check this out. This is the only show on a major network in South Florida that's dedicated to the Black community. The only show on a major network dedicated to the Black community. That says a lot. That NBC said, okay, we believe that Black Lives Matter. We believe in listening to those voices we don't hear from every day. We believe that this show is extremely important. So kudos to them. Kudos to NBC
Absolutely.
for believing in that, because I'm telling you, you have and I've had community affairs shows, but they weren't dedicated to the Black community. They were just dedicated to the community. It's almost like it was a scary thing to say. No, let's keep it real, and we are unapologetically Black. That means that, hey, we will make sure that these stories are told. We have no shame in our game. We're going to make sure that we listen, that these stories are told, and that we continue to have these conversations because they're so important to our community, to the fabric of our community.
Absolutely. I agree. So, excuse me, through your work and through Voices, you've been covering the good, the bad, and so on and so forth in the Black community. What are some of your most memorable moments to date?
Most memorable moments on the show?
On the show for Voices of coverage in the Black community.
Definitely Breathing While Black, because Breathing While Black, that show, that was a town hall, and it was at Florida Memorial University. Kudos to Florida Memorial University for having it. And also Russell Motley, your colleague, as well as a good friend of mine, but for pushing that at Florida Memorial University. But it was open to the community, and it brought about people from different backgrounds, different races. We heard from local law enforcement. We heard from community activists talking about the importance of making sure that we understand what's going on in the Black community when it comes to Ahmaud Arbery, who's running down the street, taking a jog, who's pretty much shot and killed, allegedly shot and killed. No. He was shot and killed in broad daylight. And then Breonna Taylor. And of course, as you know, George Floyd, but all these stories, which are extremely important, that we talk about and we have a conversation about. And there was another gentleman, a teen by the name of DeLuca Roll. We talked about DeLuca Roll, a teenager who was taken down in a very rough arrest in South Florida. And we talked about these stories, but we talked about the importance of understanding how to better work with the Black community. From local law enforcement, Black community, also the Karens out there who want to call the cops on Black people who are bird watching in a park. And so we talked about these things, and we talked about, implicit bias and why it exists and why it's important to be aware of it. Why it's important not just to think that every Black person is up to no good just because of the color of his skin, or because he may look a certain way, because he may have locks in his hair. It's okay to be street smarts, but you have to understand that you could come across as racist if you don't pay attention to your attitude. And so we had those experiences. That town hall was awesome. I absolutely loved it. And I was very proud to be a part of that town hall. And and you already heard me talk about Driving While Black. And the only reason why is because that was one of the first really tough dialogues that we had on the show. And we had Chief Oates, who former Miami Beach Police Chief Oates on the show, Marwan Porter, civil rights attorney, who was on the show talking about driving while Black. And I've been the victim of that. And so I was able to share my personal story about being pulled over, coming from Indiana University, going to Indianapolis, and the cops basically having their guns drawn, thinking that we were, because we're in a Cadillac, thinking that we were up to no good. So those stories stand out the most to me, those particular shows, because I believe that people got a lot out of those shows, no matter what background they're from. It's about, again, having those conversations so we can work better together as a people.
Absolutely. Now you get to really look at Black South Florida through your lens as a media personality. And so I wanted to just kind of get a quick lightning round of your views on a few things. Black on Black shootings in our communities.
They need to stop. We need to understand, if we stand up and we say Black Lives Matter as a people, then we need to stand up against Black on Black crime. We need to be just as vocal about Black on Black crime. If I'm sitting here shouting the names of people who have lost their lives, like George Floyd, like Ahmaud Arbery, like Breonna Taylor, if I continue to shout these names, Michael Gardner, excuse me, I should be able to shout the name to our people and say, you need to show that same energy that you show when you shout Black Lives Matter. You show me that Black Lives Matter, and speak up against Black on Black crime. It needs to stop. The shootings need to stop, because as we've seen an array of mass shootings. We've seen an array of shootings and gun violence in our community. And that gun violence, it impacts all of us. And a bullet has no color. But let it be clear, it has been impacting the Black community more so than ever as of late. And it needs to stop. We need to learn to speak up. We need to learn that if we care about our community, to say something, because we know who did it. We know who shot our boy down the street. We got to say something. Be anonymous, but say something. Show that you care about your community. Show that you care about your people. Say something. You want to see your kids grow up safe. You want to see your kids grow up past the age of 21. You want your kids to grow up to the age of 50. Say something. Speak up. Don't be afraid. So to say that I'm upset, and I'm gonna say, you can hear the passion in my voice. I am. I was just part of the Peace March yesterday, and I was out there all day because I wanted to be out there with the people. I've seen the faces of the mothers who have lost children to gun violence, and it hurts. A little 3-year-old child, Elijah LaFrance, killed at his own birthday party, innocently. That could have been my child. That could have been my 2.5-year-old.
Yeah.
And it touches me to my core, and more needs to be done. We have to speak up. We have to show that we believe in our community and say something. Say something. We have too many grieving mothers. We have to stop that.
Yeah, and we just had a comment from Dexter, stop the snitches get stitches mentality.
That's right.
As well. And, I always ask the question, and I feel like I never get a response, not from you per se, but even from law enforcement when it comes to, gun violence in the Black community. And I'm like, where are the guns coming from? And how is it so easy for our youth to get access to these guns? And I feel like, yes, when we have to, we do the marches and we raise our voices, and Black Lives Matter, all of that, when it's police officer involved shootings in the Black community. But like you said, I don't feel the same energy when it comes to, and it's our youth. This is our future. These are our future young men and women, but in particular, a lot of our young Black males who are caught up in this. And I'm like, where are they getting the guns? Where are they getting the ammunition? How is this even infiltrating our community this way? And I don't hear enough conversation around that.
Yeah, I mean, well, the guns are illegal. Sometimes the guns are stolen, and so then they're sold on the black market. So it's easy. I know when I was younger, you could go up the street. There was always a contact, a connect that's going to help connect you with a gun, always, and then they'll sell it to you. So sometimes these guns are stolen, or sometimes they buy them off the black market where they're illegally sold. And that's how those kids get the guns. But there's a connect somewhere. And so that's why people are like, where do they get the guns? Well, the guns, they're there. And that's why you have gun buyback programs, different things like this, where it's like, no questions asked, just turn a gun in. Yeah. Just turn a gun in. You will not get arrested. And a lot of these guns, no permits and everything else. Yes, there needs to be, of course, maybe stronger gun laws in place for those maybe with mental health issues. But in regards to the guns, to those that are just those teens, the youth that are on the street that are able to get access to them, more needs to be done there. But it is tough because they're on the black market, and that's how they get them. That's how they get these guns. I'm telling you, it's easy for some to get access to these guns. All they have to do, there's a connect. Boom. And that's how they can get that gun.
And then I think the other part, to me, when we talk about the shootings, especially amongst our youth, it seems like there's no sense of brotherly love, sisterly love. There's no sense of unity. There's no sense of future. What is my future going to look like, whether I'm alive and in prison for a crime or I'm dead? Because I'm on one side of the gun shooting, or I'm being shot at, or I'm going to be retaliated against, even if I don't get caught by the law enforcement officials. There's some possible retaliation. So it's like there's no future outlook. And I don't know how we address all of that, but, especially even from a media standpoint.
Well, from a media standpoint, what I can do, of course, is use my platform so you can hear the pain from the mothers who have lost their children. You can hear from Tangela Sears. You can hear from Romania Dukes. You can hear from mothers who are out there, who are foot soldiers in our community, who are working, trying to come up with different ways to address the issue of gun violence. So I could use my platform from the media standpoint, because this is what I do. So I can provide a voice for them. I can provide a voice for those that are still looking for the shooters out there. By the way, they're still looking for the shooters from the El Mula mass shooting, that we haven't found them yet. Nobody's come forward. The hookah lounge shooting, another mass shooting, a graduation shooting. Nobody's come forward yet. Elijah LaFrance, we still don't know who did that. Some people know. Chastity Saunders, some people know. Cops still investigating that. More needs to be done to bring those to justice. And then these young people who are doing some of these things, we have to start from the grassroots. We got to get them involved in programs. We got to let them know that there are other ways they can get paid. And remember, there's a new thing out there. It's called social media. Well, social media, there's some great things that come along with social media, but there's also some bad things as well. So what I found out recently, speaking with law enforcement, is that with social media, there are beefs that are happening on social media, and that in turn is going to the streets. And so that beef on social media is turning to the streets, and they're taking that beef on social media out to the streets. And now we're having shootings and everything else because of it. So I've heard that as well. So more needs to be done in these areas, but we must not stop. There's a peace and prosperity plan Miami-Dade County Mayor Daniela Levine Cava put in place along with Keon Hardeman and others. And Keone McGee is going to oversee some of that. But there are plans like that in place to help in hoping to deter some of that at an early age. So you get them on the right track, and hopefully we could change that dynamic. But you have to understand, these are youth that are growing. Their minds are still developing. They see things differently. We must be able to relate to them, work with them, let them know that they have a future. Let them know the future is not behind bars. Let them know that they have a future elsewhere and that they can be anything that they want to be. But it starts at the ground level, and it starts when they're young. It doesn't start after the first shooting. It doesn't. It starts way before that.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That brings me to when we talk about the state of the Black economy, and I'll be doing my conference again on the state of the National Black Economic Conference. Um, Hopefully, you'll be able to be available this time to moderate. But when we talk about the state of the economy, but particularly the Black economy in South Florida, everything from education to housing to jobs and employment, entrepreneurship. What are some of your viewpoints that you're coming across, or some of the things that you're coming across in your outreach to the community?
Generational wealth. Making sure that we build generational wealth, making sure that financial literacy is extremely important, that we continue to educate our Black community about the purpose of the dollar, about the purpose of investing into each other, about the purpose of investing into the Black business, because we as a people don't do enough of it. So I'm part of One United, One Transaction conference, which is happening on Saturday. I'm moderating. I'm actually interviewing Damon John from Shark Tank, FUBU founder. But I had a conversation with the president and of One United Bank, and Terry and I, we talked about that. We talked about why it's important that people learn these things, and we start off again at an early age, and we break that cycle. Why is it that other cultures, other races, that they have a will, whereas like a very small percentage of Black people actually have a will that's going to help take care of their offspring? Why is it that they don't have life insurance? Again, breaking that cycle, breaking that change, having a life insurance policy so you can make sure that you pass that along, because that's the best way to pass along generational wealth. Because if I die today, will my kids have enough money where they are able to go to college, where they're able to invest in a business or buy a house? And so what you do is you break that cycle. And because we were disproportionately impacted compared to our white counterparts in the 50s and the 60s, because of redlining and everything else, of course, we got a slower start on everything. Talk about 40 acres and a mule, we didn't even get that. So we got a slower start when it came to building businesses and prosperity within the Black community. And so now we're doing these things, but again, it has been challenging. We got to break the cycle. And we got to make sure that we continue to invest our dollars into the Black community, because believe me, other races do. There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But we have to continue to uplift. That's why you saw after George Floyd, we started having more of a conversation. We started seeing more companies investing and trying to help small Black businesses grow. You know that. You saw that, Emery. And it's interesting because this has been going on for decades and years. But after George Floyd, it was like it started a conversation. And then we didn't have Black CEOs as many in top companies and corporations. We started talking about that. Next thing you know, companies are starting to look for Black CEOs and wanted to look for those qualified candidates. We've had qualified candidates for years. You guys just didn't even see it. Right. But now you see it now. Now we're having a conversation. That's why it's extremely important. So I could talk about this forever, but remember, it's important that we break that cycle. And remember, generational wealth. If you don't know what it is, look it up. But always remember to leave something behind for your kids, for your grandkids. Make sure that they get a head start and they're not left behind.
Absolutely. I'm going to have to do a shameless plug. August 13th, National Black Economic Conference. It'll be virtual. And the theme is, as it has been for the past several years, is the road to generational wealth, where we'll be talking about various opportunities and investing and home ownership and so much more. So please visit nationalblackeconomicconference.com. So, and I appreciate that, because we could talk about so much of this for so many hours. I want you to just, what role do you believe media plays in the perceptions that are shaped about the Black community?
I believe the media plays an extremely important and big role, because you have to understand that people, of course, we have social media, we have YouTube and everything else, but look at the power. Let me give you an example. Look at the power of social media. Before, before we started to really police it, there was so much disinformation out there. People believed any and everything you posted, even if you were just joking. They thought it was true. Now we understand that people do lie and people make up things to fit their own narratives. So that is how important the media is. So when you have a media network like NBC, CBS, Fox News, ABC, but they're all, you can argue that some out there a little bit more to the right, some a little bit more to the left, but for the most part, these are reputable companies. So it's important to understand that they craft based on their stories in these meetings and everything else. They can craft the narrative on a story, and people are going to latch on to that story. I have an important role as a journalist. People believe in me. They believe in my ability. Unfortunately, there was the last administration that talked so dirty and bad about the media that everybody thought every person in the media basically was wrong or lied or twisted their stories. And you had a journalist that was murdered because he was speaking outright against a regime, Jamal Khashoggi. And so that's how important our jobs are in the media as a journalist. As I always tell these young journalists, I say, I want you to remember the most important thing. I know you want to be a reporter, you want to be an anchor one day. I said, I want you to be a good journalist, most importantly, more than anything. I want you to be the best journalist you can be. Then you can be all those things that you want to be. But remember, with being a journalist comes a lot of pride, because you can't take that pride for granted, because people trust and believe in you. Never lose your character when you are a journalist. Never lose who you are when you're a journalist. And always remember to be objective, report the facts, report what is. And so we have a very important role as far as molding and crafting what goes on in the community as well as the Black community.
Absolutely. Wow. So I know we could talk all afternoon, but I want to be mindful of your time.
Thank you.
And those who are tuned in, because we're probably the only ones not actually eating lunch right now. So is there a takeaway or a golden nugget that you would like to leave with our audience?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Is there a takeaway or a golden nugget that you would like to leave with our audience?
Absolutely. And it's what I always say. Education is the key to success. If you believe, you will succeed.
Absolutely. Now, how does our audience reach you, Jawan? And if they want to be featured on Voices, how do they get in touch with you?
Yes, you can get in touch with me. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and it's Jawan NBC6, JAWAN NBC6. And that's my IG. You can inbox me a story idea. You can hit me up on Twitter and inbox me a story idea. And you can also go to the NBC6 Facebook or YouTube page, and watch Voices, but you can go to the NBC6 page, our website, and you'll see how to contact me there. And I'll get an email, viewer comment, email about a potential story idea. You can contact me that way as well. So I encourage you, if you have a story idea, I can't promise you that I'll do it, but I'll look into it. But I believe that all voices need to be heard.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Stay with me for a moment. Let me just thank our sponsors again and say a few announcements. Really appreciate all the gems that you've dropped here. We'll definitely continue to follow you and your career and your journey and all the great work that you do in our community. And thank you for being a voice for the voiceless in our community.
Anne Marie, thank you so much. I want to say thank you to you, Legacy Magazine, MIA Magazine. A big thank you to Dexter Bridgman. He's been a mentor of mine that I've followed for years, since I used to hound him about getting into one of the publications, the magazines, back in 2005, I think it was. And Russell Motley, who's also a dear friend of mine. I want to say thank you to both of them and you for doing a phenomenal job with this and Lunch with Legacy Leaders. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you. You guys continue to shine. Be the best that you can be.
Absolutely. Thank you. And we appreciate you. Well, stay with us for a moment. Thank you again to our sponsors, Broward Health, AARP, the Solid Waste Authority of Palm Beach County, and the African American Black Alzheimer's Disease Initiative at the John P. Hussman Institute for Human Genomics, University of Miami Miller School of Medicine. Our next issue, guys, is coming out where we're featuring the top educators in South Florida this Sunday, June 20th. Please check out the Miami Herald for Legacy Miami, as well as the Sun Sentinel for Legacy South Florida, where you will see the highlights of our top educators, as well as some amazing stories from our contributing writers. You can also check it out at miamediagrp.com. And please remember to tune into our show, Soul, hosted by Miss Nikki Jellin, every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. as we disseminate intellectual entertainment on fashion, arts and culture, relationship, mental health, and food in South Florida. And again, as always, share this video because I'm sure someone out there will benefit from this great information and content that we have shared today. And mark your calendar for next Thursday. We'll see you at noon.